The sun had just begun to set over the village of Macquail, painting the sky in colors of gold and red. The air was warm and the birds were flying back to their nests near the tall palm trees. In the middle of this peaceful evening, a woman named Lena walked slowly along the dusty path that led to the great river Kanda. Her heart was heavy and her eyes were full of tears. Lena had been married to Boma, a kind and hard-working farmer, for more than 10 years. They had everything a family could need: a strong home, good land, and the love of their neighbors. But one thing was missing: a child. Every year Lena prayed, hoping the gods would bless her with a baby. But each year passed in silence. The women in the village often talked about her when they thought she could not hear. Some said, maybe she has angered the gods. Others whispered, maybe the river has closed her womb. Their words hurt Lena deeply, though she smiled when they looked her way. Only her husband, Boma, stood by her side. "Do not listen to them, my love," he would say softly. "A child will come when the time is right." But Lena's heart could not find peace. Every time she saw a mother holding her baby or heard a child's laughter, her chest felt tight. She prayed every morning, offering fruit, milk, and even her favorite beads, but still nothing changed. One evening, as the sun touched the edge of the hills, Lena decided to do something she had never done before. She would go to the river, not just any river but the river Kanda, where people believed the river goddess Mama Naya lived. The old people of Macquail often told stories about her. They said she was a gentle spirit who blessed women with children, brought rain to the farms, and protected those who came to her with pure hearts. Lena carried a small clay pot filled with palm oil, some white flowers, and a piece of cloth she had woven herself. When she reached the river, the air felt different, cooler, softer, almost alive. The water shone silver in the fading light, and the sound of the current was like music. She felt as if the river was breathing with her. She went down on her knees at the edge of the water, placed her gifts before her, and closed her eyes. "River Mother," she whispered, "I am your daughter. I have come with an open heart. I ask for one thing: a son. A child who will carry my husband's name, who will laugh in this house, who will call me mother." Her voice trembled as she continued, "I will honor you forever. I will tell the world that Mama Naya is kind and faithful. Please hear me." For a moment nothing happened. The only sound was the gentle splash of the river against the stones. Then the wind began to move. It brushed against Lena's face, soft and cool. The water rippled even though no stone had been thrown. The white flowers she had placed began to float slowly toward the middle of the river. Lena gasped softly. She looked around but no one was there. Then she heard it, a voice, gentle and low as if coming from the water itself. "Lena," it said, "your heart is true and your pain has been seen. You shall have your son. But remember, every gift from the river must be cared for like water itself. Treat him with love, with patience, and with humility. Forget this and the river will remind you." Lena's eyes widened. She wanted to speak but her throat felt dry. She bowed her head to the ground and whispered, "Thank you, River Mother. I will remember your words always." When she looked up again, the river was calm and silent. The flowers were gone. The wind had stopped. It was as if nothing had happened at all. But Lena knew something had changed. Deep inside her, she felt warmth, a gentle light that filled her body. That night, she returned home. Boma was sitting outside their hut, waiting for her. When he saw her, he stood quickly. "Lena, where have you been?" "I was worried." She smiled, and for the first time in many months, her eyes shone with hope. "I went to the river," she said softly. "I spoke to Mama Naya. She heard me." Boma looked at her carefully. "You believe she will answer you?" Lena nodded. "She already has." He did not argue. He simply took her hand and said, "Then we will wait together." Days passed, then weeks, and soon months. Life in Macquail went on. The farmers worked, children played, and the market was full of chatter. But in Lena's heart, something new had taken root. She no longer felt the emptiness that had followed her for years. She smiled more often, sang as she cooked, and walked with a lighter step. One morning she woke before sunrise feeling strange. Her body was warm and she felt a small flutter inside her belly. She sat up, placed a hand on her stomach, and tears filled her eyes. She didn't need anyone to tell her, she knew. The River Mother had kept her promise. She ran outside to find Boma, who was feeding the goats. "Boma," she called out, her voice trembling. He turned, worried, but when he saw her face he understood. She didn't have to say the words. He dropped everything and ran to her, holding her close. They both cried, their tears mixing with laughter. "Mama Naya is kind," Lena whispered. "The river gives life. As the months went by, the whole village shared their joy. The women helped Lena prepare, weaving baby clothes and telling her stories of motherhood. The men congratulated Boma and promised to help him build a new room for the baby. Even those who once gossiped about Lena now came to her home with gifts and blessings. Each evening Lena walked to the river to say thank you. She would sit by the water and smile, feeling it move softly beside her. Sometimes she thought she could hear a hum, a low, sweet song carried by the current. She would close her eyes and whisper, "I remember your words, River Mother. I will not forget." The day her baby was born, the river rose higher than it had in years. The villagers said they heard it singing, its waters sparkling under the morning sun. Boma named the boy Kano, meaning born of the river. And though he looked like any other child, there was something in his eyes, a calm, shining depth that made people fall silent when he stared at them. Lena held him close, kissed his forehead and whispered, "You are my miracle." She looked toward the river in the distance and smiled. "Thank you, Mama Naya. I will raise him with love." That night, when the village was quiet, Lena dreamed of the river again. In her dream, the goddess's voice returned, gentle but strong. "Remember, daughter, water gives life, but it can also take it. Teach your son to walk with peace." Lena woke with tears in her eyes, holding her baby tighter. She whispered softly, "I understand." Outside, the river flowed on, calm, endless, and full of secrets. The season of heavy rain had just ended in the village of Mackwale when Lena gave birth to her son. The morning was bright and warm and the sound of birds filled the air. Boma ran from the house shouting with joy, "A boy! A boy has been born." The villagers gathered quickly, cheering and clapping. After so many years of waiting, their prayers had been answered. Inside the small hut, Lena held her baby close. He was small and soft, his skin glowing like morning light on clear water. His eyes opened slowly, and when she looked into them, Lena felt something deep and peaceful, like standing beside the river itself. "You are Kano," she whispered. "Born of the river, my miracle." The baby cooed softly as if he understood. Word spread fast through Mackwale that Lena's child was no ordinary baby. Some said the river goddess, Mama Naya, had given him her blessing. Others said he was born with water in his soul. The old women came to see him, bringing calabashes of milk and small charms to protect him from spirits. They watched as Lena fed him and whispered, "He shines like the river at sunrise." Boma was proud. Every morning he went to the riverbank, knelt and said, "Thank you, River Mother. You gave me a son and I will honor you." He began to build a small shrine near their home with white stones and seashells to show his gratitude. As days turned into weeks, Kano grew fast and strong. He was calm, rarely cried, and slept soundly through the nights. But there was something strange about him, something even his parents could not understand. When he laughed, the breeze outside the hut would rise gently, carrying the smell of wet earth and flowers. When he cried, dark clouds would gather above the village, and rain would fall softly until he calmed down again. At first, Lena thought it was only her imagination. But one afternoon as she washed clothes near the river, Kano began to cry loudly. The sky, clear only moments before, turned gray. A cool wind blew and rain started to fall, drenching everything. Lena ran back to the hut, covering her baby, but the moment she stepped inside, the rain stopped. The villagers were amazed. "This child," they whispered, "is truly touched by the river spirit." As Kano grew older, his bond with the river became even stronger. He loved water more than anything. Whenever he saw it, his eyes sparkled. He would crawl to the water jars in the kitchen and splash his little hands inside. If someone tried to stop him, he would frown, and suddenly the wind would stir, shaking the leaves outside. Lena and Boma soon realized that their son was not like other children. Still, they loved him deeply. Lena cared for him with great gentleness, remembering the words of Mama Naya, "A gift from the river must be cared for like water itself." She made sure Kano was never angry or sad for long. When he fell and cried, she held him close until his tears stopped. When he laughed, she laughed with him, filling their home with warmth and peace. The villagers came often to see the boy. Some brought gifts, fruits, toys, and beads, hoping the goddess would bless their families too. Others came just to look at him, whispering quietly, "He is a child of magic." The chief of the village himself came one day. He was an old man with gray hair and a wise smile. He looked at the baby and said, "His spirit is old, older than ours. This boy will change things in Mackwale. The river has marked him." Boma felt both proud and afraid. "What if the gift becomes a burden?" he asked his wife that night. Lena placed her hand on his and said, "The river gives, but it also teaches. If we guide him with love, he will do good. As months turned into years, Kano began to walk and speak. He liked to play by the water and listen to its sound. Sometimes, Lena found him sitting by the riverbank, whispering softly as if talking to someone unseen. When she asked, "Who are you speaking to, my son?" he would smile and say, "The lady in the water. She tells me stories." Lena froze the first time he said that. She remembered the night she had knelt before the river, begging for a child. Could the river mother truly be speaking to him? Her heart filled with both wonder and fear. But she said nothing to anyone. She just watched him carefully and prayed for his safety. One evening, when Kano was 3 years old, something happened that made the whole village talk for weeks. The sky had been dry for a long time, and the crops were beginning to die. People prayed for rain, but none came. Then one afternoon Kano went missing. Lena ran through the village calling his name. "Kano, where are you?" Everyone began to search. They found him sitting near the river, his small hands touching the water. He was humming softly. Before anyone could reach him, thunder rolled across the sky. The wind blew hard and heavy rain began to fall. It rained for hours, soaking the earth, filling the wells and saving the crops. When the storm stopped, Kano walked back to his mother, smiling. "The lady said the land was thirsty," he said innocently. That night, the elders gathered at Lena's home. They spoke in low voices saying, "This child is a blessing from the river. But remember, blessings can turn to curses if not handled with care." Lena listened quietly, holding her son in her arms. She thought of Mama Naya's words again and whispered to herself, "I will care for him like water." Years went by and Kano grew into a curious, gentle boy. He loved to help his father in the fields and his mother in the kitchen. When someone in the village was sick, he would bring them water from the river, saying, "Drink this. It will help." Somehow, those who drank it often got better the next day. The villagers respected him deeply. They would smile when he passed and say, "The river's son walks among us." But not everyone was pleased. Some were jealous. They said, "Why should one child have such power? The river should bless us all, not just him." But whenever someone spoke against him, their wells would dry or their fields would not grow until they came to apologize. Through it all, Lena remained humble. She never let pride enter her heart. Each night, she would take a bowl of clean water, place it near the window and say softly, "Thank you, River Mother. Watch over him." Then she would kiss Kano goodnight, and he would smile in his sleep, dreaming of waves and songs beneath the moon. The people of Mackwale slowly began to understand that Kano was not a curse, nor simply a blessing. He was a reminder, a living connection between the village and the river that gave them life. His laughter brought rain, his tears brought storms, and his calm brought peace. But deep inside, Lena knew that the river never gives without reason. She could feel it in the way the water sang some nights, louder than usual. It was as if the river goddess was watching, waiting, and reminding her that every gift, no matter how beautiful, carries a test. Still, as she looked at her son playing by the doorway, his face bright with joy, she smiled. "Whatever comes," she thought, "I will face it. He is my child, my miracle, my river's blessing." And the river, flowing quietly beyond the trees, seemed to whisper back, "So it shall be." The sun hung low over Mackwale and the air was dry like dust. The grass had turned brown and even the river, once full and singing, now moved slowly, its water shallow and tired. The people of the village prayed for rain, but the sky stayed empty. Days passed into weeks, and the sound of coughing children and hungry goats filled the air. Kano was now 10 years old. He had grown tall and calm, with eyes that still carried the shine of the river. He watched the dry land with a quiet sadness. Every morning he walked to the riverbank and sat by the water. He touched the sand and whispered, "Please don't leave us." His voice was soft yet filled with hope. The villagers had stopped planting. Their wells had dried. Women carried empty pots, walking long distances to find even a drop of water. The old men gathered under the big baobab tree and said, "The gods are angry. We have done something wrong." But when they saw Kano sitting by the river each evening, they felt a small spark of faith. They called him Mwana wa Maji, the river's son. Lena, his mother, watched her son carefully. She knew his heart was connected to the water, and she feared what the drought might do to him. "Kano," she said one afternoon as he sat beside the shrinking river, "come home. The sun is too hot." He looked up at her with calm eyes. "Mother," he said, "the river is thirsty too. If I leave it will feel alone." Lena felt a shiver in her heart. She had once begged the river goddess for a child, and she remembered her promise. Every gift comes with care. She worried that perhaps the drought was a test. That night the sky was red and the air still. The village slept in silence. But Kano could not sleep. He could hear the soft voice of the river in his dreams, calling his name like a whisper through the reeds. He rose quietly and walked barefoot to the riverbank. The moonlight danced on the water, making it look silver and alive. He knelt down and placed his small hands on the warm sand. "River Mother," he whispered, "you gave me life. Now my people are dying. Please help them. Please bring rain." For a moment there was no sound, only the chirping of crickets and the sigh of the wind. Then, slowly, the surface of the river began to move. A soft glow appeared under the water, blue and gentle. Kano's hair lifted as if touched by a breeze that came from nowhere. The glow spread and the air changed. He felt something deep and powerful stir inside him, like the beating of a heart beneath the earth. When he opened his eyes, he saw clouds gathering far away in the sky. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. Kano smiled. He stood and whispered, "Thank you." The first drop fell just as he turned to go home. Then another and another. Within minutes, the sky burst open. Rain poured down heavily, washing the dust from the roofs and fields. People woke up and ran out of their huts, laughing and crying at the same time. They danced barefoot in the mud, lifting their arms to the sky. "Rain. The rain has come," they shouted. "The river's son has called it back." Lena stood in the doorway, her clothes soaked, watching her son walk back through the storm. His face was calm, his steps slow, as if he were walking through a dream. When he reached her, she pulled him into her arms and held him tightly. "You did this," she whispered. "You brought the rain." Kano looked up at her with a faint smile. "The river only needed someone to ask," he said softly. By morning the land was green again. The wells filled and the air smelled sweet. The villagers began planting once more, singing songs of joy. They brought food and gifts to Lena's house, thanking her son for saving them. Some bowed when they saw him, saying, "Blessed be the river's son." Others brought small bowls of water as offerings, pouring them into the river to show respect. But Kano did not act proud. He spent his days quietly, helping the farmers and playing with the younger children. When people tried to thank him, he only said, "It was not me. It was the river." Still, strange things began to happen. Whenever Kano passed by, the grass seemed to grow faster. Flowers turned toward him as if reaching for his light. Even the sick found comfort when he visited. It was as if the water spirit itself walked with him. Yet Lena could not shake her worry. She noticed that after each rainfall, Kano grew pale and tired. His hands trembled sometimes and he slept deeply for hours. Once, when she asked him if he was all right, he simply said, "When the river gives, it also takes." Her heart grew heavy with fear. She went to see Baba Kito, the village healer, a wise old man with kind eyes. After listening, he said, "Your son is tied to the spirit world. Every time he calls the rain, he gives a part of himself. Be careful, Lena. The river never gives freely." Those words followed her everywhere. At night, as Kano slept, she sat beside him and prayed quietly, "River Mother, please do not take him from me." But Kano did not seem afraid. He often went to the river alone, talking softly as if to an old friend. Sometimes, when Lena tried to follow him, she would hear laughter, the sound of water splashing though the air was still. Once, she saw ripples form on the river's surface in the shape of two hands, one big, one small, touching briefly before fading away. Seasons passed and the people of Makwale grew used to Kano's quiet miracles. They built a small shrine by the river in his honor, laying flowers and fruit at its base. Every time rain came, they sang songs for him, calling him Mwana wa Maji, their river's son. But not all were kind. A few men grew jealous, saying, "He is just a boy. Why do we bow to him? Maybe he has trapped our rains with witchcraft." They began to whisper among themselves, spreading fear. Yet when they tried to insult him openly, their fields dried again and their goats fell sick. After that, they stayed silent. Through it all, Kano remained gentle. He loved his people and never used his gift for harm. When he saw children crying, he made small puddles of cool water appear for them to splash in. When the elders prayed, he joined them quietly. He had no pride in what he could do. He simply believed he was helping the river share its kindness. Lena watched him, both proud and worried. She could see he was changing, not just growing but becoming something more than human. There was a calm strength in him, something that made people stop and listen when he spoke. One evening, as the sun set in gold and red, she asked, "Kano, do you ever miss being just a child?" He smiled faintly. "Mother, I am still your child. But I belong to the river too. It watches over all of us. One day I will return to it just as rain returns to the sea. Her heart tightened but she said nothing. She only hugged him close, feeling the steady beat of his heart, like the rhythm of the river's flow. That night, as the moon rose over Mackwale and the sound of frogs filled the air, the river shimmered with soft blue light. From its depths came a gentle whisper that floated through the wind, a voice only Lena could hear. The river's son has kept his promise. But every river must one day call its water home. And though the rain had finally come and the land was full again, Lena could not sleep. She sat by her window looking toward the glowing river, knowing deep inside that every miracle has its price. The sun was high and hot over Mackwale when Kano walked through the village with a small basket of water lilies in his hands. The air shimmered with heat and even the birds hid in the trees. People waved at him as he passed, calling, "The river's son. May your steps bring coolness." Kano smiled shyly, bowing his head. He never thought of himself as special. He only tried to help. But not everyone felt kindly toward him. Among the villagers lived a trader named Sephu. He was a man of wealth and pride, known for his loud voice and sharper tongue. His store stood at the center of the market, filled with fine cloth and shiny trinkets. He liked to boast, "I built my riches with my own hands, not with magic from a river." Whenever he saw Kano he would smirk. One afternoon as Kano passed by the market, Sephu called out, "Ah, the boy who talks to water. Tell me, does your river pay for food too?" The crowd laughed nervously. Kano stopped, surprised. He had never been spoken to that way before. "I do not ask the river for riches," Kano said quietly. "It gives what we need." Sephu scoffed. "Then ask it for gold. Maybe it will make you a real man, not a spirit child." The laughter around him grew louder. Kano felt something sharp twist inside him, something new and painful. He had never felt anger before, but the trader's words burned like fire in his chest. The faces around him blurred, all he could hear was the cruel laughter. His hands clenched. "You speak with a dry heart," he said softly, his voice trembling. "May your land dry with it." Then he turned and walked away, tears burning in his eyes. The market fell silent. Some people whispered in shock. Sephu laughed again, waving his hand. "Empty words from a child," he said. But the next day he was not laughing. When the sun rose, Sephu's fields were brown and cracked. The crops he had planted weeks before had withered overnight. The stream behind his home had vanished, leaving only dust. Even the air around his house felt heavy and hot. His goats refused to drink and his wife cried out, "What curse has come upon us?" Word spread quickly through Mackwale. People said, "The river's son has spoken, and the water has obeyed." Some were afraid. Others bowed their heads and said, "He has the power of the gods." But Lena was filled with fear. She found her son sitting quietly by the river, his face pale. The water beside him rippled even though there was no wind. "Kano," she whispered, kneeling beside him, "what did you do?" He looked at her with wide eyes. "He laughed at the river, Mama. He said I was strange. I didn't mean to harm him. I only spoke in anger." Lena took his trembling hands in hers. "My child," she said softly, "words from your mouth are no longer just words. They carry the weight of the river. You must be careful." Tears filled Kano's eyes. "I didn't want this," he said. "I only wanted to be like everyone else." Lena held him close. "No, my son. You were never meant to be like everyone else. But even power as deep as the river must learn to flow gently." That evening Lena took Kano to the riverbank. The water glowed faintly under the moonlight. She knelt, dipping her hands into the current. "Mother of the river," she whispered, "we come to ask your forgiveness." The water began to move, forming soft waves though the air was still. A voice rose from its depths, calm and strong, like thunder hidden in the clouds. "Lena of Mackwale," it said, "you were warned. Every gift must be guided. Your son's anger has woken the spirit of flood." Lena bowed her head low. "Please, Mama Naya," she begged. "He is young and does not understand. Have mercy." The voice softened. "Teach him peace, not pride. Power without kindness is a flood without a bank." Then the water grew calm again. The sound of frogs returned and the light faded. Lena sat in silence, her hands shaking. She looked at Kano, who stared into the dark water, his reflection trembling like ripples of sorrow. "I will learn," he said softly. "I promise." In the days that followed, Kano avoided the market. He spent his time helping the farmers repair their dry fields. He worked beside them, carrying water from the river until his hands were blistered. Some were afraid to speak to him, but most saw his effort and felt their hearts soften. After a week, Lena told him to go back to the river and ask for forgiveness once more. Kano walked alone that evening. The river was wide and calm, glowing gold under the setting sun. He knelt at the edge and spoke quietly. "Mother," he said, "I was foolish. I let anger live in my heart. Please forgive me. I do not wish to harm anyone again." For a long time, there was no sound except the soft trickle of water. Then the surface shimmered and a gentle voice answered, "The river forgives as long as the heart learns." Kano closed his eyes and felt peace wash over him. The river's cool mist touched his face and he smiled faintly. He took a small bowl of water and carried it to Sefu's land. He poured it into the cracked soil, whispering, "Let life return." By morning the ground around Sefu's farm was damp again. New shoots rose from the soil and the trader's goats began to drink. The people watched in awe, whispering, "He has healed the land." Sefu came to Kano's home, his head bowed. "I spoke with pride," he said. "Forgive me, river's son." Kano nodded gently. "The river forgave us both," he said. From that day he learned to speak with care and act with kindness. When people came to him for help, he listened first and answered softly. He no longer sought to show his power but to guide it with peace. The villagers began to call him Kano the Gentle Tide. Sometimes when the moon was full, Lena would see him sitting by the river, silent and thoughtful. She knew he still spoke with Mama Naya, learning lessons that only the water could teach. And though the river was calm again, she never forgot the words of the goddess, that power without kindness could destroy everything. So she prayed each night, not for more rain, not for riches, but for her son's heart to stay as still and pure as the water under the stars. The people of Mackwell too learned from Kano's mistake. They treated each other with more patience, spoke more gently and respected the river deeply. They saw that its strength, like Kano's, could both give life and take it away. In time, Sefu rebuilt his fields and shared his harvest freely with others. Whenever he saw Kano, he would bow his head, saying, "The river flows where kindness leads." And Kano would smile softly, replying, "Yes, and it dries where pride walks." From then on, peace returned to Mackwell. The rains came when needed, the fields stayed green, and the river sang again, not in anger but in harmony. The villagers would often say to their children, "Remember, even the river's son had to learn that the heart must be calm for the water to stay clear." And whenever the sun shone on the moving water, it glittered like laughter, as if Mama Naya herself was watching, proud that her child had finally learned the true meaning of her gift. The years passed gently in Mackwell, and the boy who had once spoken to the river grew into a wise young man. Kano had changed much since the days when his power frightened even himself. He was calm now, his eyes soft like still water. People said that his voice carried peace, and when he smiled even the wind seemed to slow. Lena grew older too, but her heart was full of pride and love. She often watched her son as he walked through the village, helping others. He had learned to use his gift not for anger or pride, but for kindness. When someone fell sick, he would bring them a calabash of water from the river. He never chanted or shouted, he simply said, "Drink and may the river's calm rest in you." The strange thing was that after drinking the sick would grow stronger. The fever would leave, the pain would fade and they would smile again. The people whispered, "Kano carries the river's life in his hands." During dry seasons, when the soil cracked and the farmers feared for their crops, Kano would visit each field. He would kneel, press his hands to the ground and whisper a quiet prayer. Soon rain would fall, not heavy or wild like before but gentle and steady, soaking into the earth. The crops grew tall and green, and the people began to believe that peace itself lived in Kano's heart. Word spread beyond Mackwell. Travelers came from other villages, women carrying babies, old men leaning on sticks, chiefs seeking blessings. They brought gifts of fruit, cloth and beads, laying them at Kano's feet. But Kano never took any of it for himself. He always said, "Give thanks to the river, not to me. I am only its voice." The shrine by the river grew larger as people added stones, shells and flowers. Children played near it, and elders came to pray for rain or health. No one feared the river anymore, they treated it like a living friend. They called it Mother of Mackwell, and whenever rain fell softly at night, people said, "The river goddess sings again." Lena often thought of that day long ago when she had gone to the river to beg for a child. She could still remember kneeling in the mud, her tears mixing with the water. Back then she had only wanted a son. She had never imagined that her prayer would bring a miracle, or that her son would become a blessing to all. One morning when the sun was golden and the air cool, Kano said to his mother, "Let us go to the river together." Lena nodded and followed him slowly. Her steps were careful, for age had touched her knees, but her heart was light. When they reached the water's edge, the river was shining like glass. The birds were quiet and a soft mist rose from the surface. Kano knelt down and placed his hands on the water. It glowed faintly, and the mist curled around him like a gentle embrace. Then from the middle of the river, a soft voice spoke, warm and full like the sound of rain on leaves. "Kano River's son," said Mama Naya, "you have honored the gift." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She could not see the goddess, but she could feel her presence, calm and kind. The river glowed brighter, and for a moment, Kano's reflection in the water looked different. Older, stronger, filled with light. "You have brought peace where there was anger," the voice continued. "You have turned pride into patience and power into healing. The river is pleased." Kano bowed his head. "Mother," he said softly, "it was your gift that taught me. I only learned to listen." The water shimmered and the voice grew tender. "Even the river listens, to the sky, to the wind, to the earth. You have learned the way of water. Go and let your kindness flow through all who live after you." Then the light faded and the river was still again. Lena reached out and touched her son's arm. "She spoke to you?" she whispered. Kano nodded. "She said the river is proud." Lena smiled, though tears ran down her face. "When I asked for you, I only wanted a child. But she gave me a gift for the world." They sat together for a while, watching the slow current move under the sun. A kingfisher dove and rose again, drops sparkling around it like tiny stars. Everything felt quiet, perfect, and alive. That evening when they returned home, the villagers gathered to greet them. They saw something shining in Kano's eyes, a calm light that made even the most troubled heart feel at ease. "He has spoken with the river mother," they whispered. From that day, Kano became a symbol of wisdom in Makwale. When disputes rose, people came to him for advice. He always listened first, then spoke gently, saying, "Let your words be like water, clear, not loud. Water shapes even stone with patience." The children followed him to the river often, sitting near his feet as he told stories of the river goddess. "She does not live only in the water," he told them. "She lives in kindness, in sharing, in peace. Wherever people care for one another, the river flows." Years later, when Kano had grown older, he continued to live simply. He built no house of stone, wore no crown, and asked for no praise. He said, "I am a son of water. When my time comes, I will return to her." And when that time did come, the people of Makwale said the river glowed brighter that night. The air was full of mist, and the sound of waves carried through the valley like a song. Some said they saw a shape in the light, a young man walking calmly across the water, smiling as he vanished into the glow. From then on, whenever it rained softly, the people of Makwale would gather by the river, raising their faces to the sky. They would say, "The river goddess sings again, proud of her son." And Lena, who lived to see many more seasons, always smiled when the rain touched her skin. She would whisper, "He is home." The river kept flowing, gentle and endless, carrying stories, blessings, and songs. Its voice was the same as ever, calm, eternal, and full of love.